Recently, I uploaded 2 videos that together made for a ranking of every theme park I visited in Europe from worst to best. This 7-week-long road trip took us to 27 different theme parks, one of the largest fun fairs in the world, and various alpine coaster stops. Altogether, this accumulated 179 new roller coaster credits, which is easily the most of any single trip I've been on. I realize this is more than a lot of coaster enthusiasts even have credits, so I'm very grateful to have been able to go on a trip of this magnitude in a foreign continent. Now, even though the title of this video is the top 25 roller coasters in Europe, I obviously didn't visit every country there. I was personally able to visit Poland, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and Switzerland. The latter 2 countries were not park focused at all. We actually visited those for the sake of hiking, city exploring, and sightseeing, so don't expect any coasters from those countries to actually make this list. Compiling a top 25 was very difficult because there were so many rides that I absolutely loved experiencing, and I wish there was room for so many that just could not fit. With that said, let's waste no more time and kick things off with the number 25 spot, Karacho at Erlebnis Park Tripsdrill in Germany. This Gerstlauer Infinity coaster accomplishes what I think the ride model is going for. A smooth ride with a crazy launch at the beginning, a fun top hat, some really compact inversions at the end. There's also a fun surprise in the darkness that I don't want to spoil for those of you who haven't ridden this thing, but it's another one of the many reasons I really liked Karacho. A rather unconventional coaster takes the number 24 spot, Skywheel at Skyline Park in Bavaria. It's been a couple years since I first wanted to ride one of these Mauer Skyloop clones. The shape and bizarre sensations had always really intrigued me. So when we were able to tack on this park at the end of the trip, there was one coaster I was really excited for. Not only was the quirkiness of this ride exactly what I was hoping for, but I also had no idea that this particular installation sent you around the course twice. Double the hang time, double the positives, and double the length made this a very memorable experience for sure. Spot number 23 brings us to Toverland for Phoenix in the Netherlands. Despite being a pretty short ride, this coaster managed to rank above all other B&M wing coasters I've ridden so far. It's able to accomplish this because it stays low to the ground for the vast majority of the layout. This makes the elements whippier, the pacing faster, and the ride more intense. Not to mention, Toverland did a great job theming this attraction and incorporating it into the amazing Avalon section of the park. Remaining in the same country, number 22 is Goliath at Walibi Holland. This Intamin mega coaster took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting the airtime to be so powerful. My only gripe with this ride is that the middle section is pretty lackluster and those twisted hills don't do much for me. But if we're judging this ride solely off of the first and third quarters, it's an absolutely fantastic ride experience. Number 21 is Linnet at Farup Summerland in Denmark. One of the most underrated coasters I rode in Europe is this Gerstlauer launch coaster that seems to get very little recognition in the coaster community. But nothing about this ride deserves to be overlooked, because it has one of the most insane LSM launches out there and some of the strongest airtime in Europe. The third quarter of this one and the bulky restraints do knock it quite a lot, but for the most part, I have very nice things to say about this coaster. A ride that was very difficult for me to rank is Colossus Kampf der Giganten at Heide Park. This Intamin prefabricated wood coaster was given a massive overhaul in the 2018-2019 season, and apparently before that, the ride ran through its layout a bit faster. Now, I cannot confirm whether or not this is true, but at least when I rode it, the first quarter was absolutely amazing and the rest was very underwhelming. The helix in the middle section and the last few airtime hills do very little for me. That said, the drop in the first 2 camelbacks are so good that it's able to claim a top 20 spot regardless. Number 19 on our list is Abyssus at Energylandia in Poland. I remember hearing so many coaster enthusiasts knock this ride for being much less intense than expected, and therefore not the best ride overall, but honestly, I don't understand where the hate comes from. I gray out at least twice every ride, and even so, you're guaranteed some pretty good airtime throughout the course. Abyssus is a very long ride, which has a lot of fun elements. It's also very smooth and very re-rideable. Definitely a coaster that did surprise me. At our number 18 spot is Fury at Bobbejaanland in Belgium, particularly when you get to ride backwards, because Fury is the only roller coaster in the world where you can vote which direction you want to ride in. I really enjoy this ride going forwards too, but getting airtime, positive G's, and hang time in reverse is absolutely fantastic. This is one that I could not stop re-riding because it was just so unpredictable. Fury is well worth of being this park's top attraction. Number 17 on our list is Troy at Toverland. This GCI wood coaster has gotten a lot of praise over the years, and it's easy to understand why. It's this absolutely massive wood structure, one of the largest wooden coasters in Europe in fact, and the ride never seems to end. Typical of GCI, Troy offers great airtime pops, fun laterals, and a station fly-through, which is always a fun little element to incorporate. One thing I will say about Troy is that it's not as smooth as I expected. Between the 4 GCIs I rode in Europe, easily this was the roughest. It's still nothing to complain about, but unless you're riding in the very front row, I could see how it could damper one's ride experience. Number 16 is Black Mamba at Phantasialand in Germany. I always knew the theming around the ride was great, and I knew the layout was uniquely integrated into the park, but I didn't know how it was actually going to ride. But man, Black Mamba's elements are so intense, I really wasn't expecting it. This ride's pacing, its power, and as I mentioned, its theming really elevated above so many B&M inverts I've ridden. I think it might even be enough to rank above all other B&M inverts I've done except for Montu, to give you some context. Now, just thinking about our number 15 coaster, Phoenix at Fair Up Summerland gets me so amped up. This ride may not have the power many people were expecting, surely it's no Lek coaster at Legendia, but it is still so dang fun. The pacing and the elements are about as enjoyable as they come. It is such a fluid ride, and because it opened this year, it's also extremely smooth. In my opinion, this was the perfect fit for this park because families and older guests alike will be able to enjoy this thing. My favorite European GCI takes the number 14 spot, Vote on Timber Coaster at Europa Park. I could not believe how fast this ride was running. Every element, every maneuver seemed to serve its place well because Vodon was always doing something. Crazy fast transitions, quick airtime pops, and some of the best pacing on any GCI. Europa Park may not have the strongest coaster lineup in the world, but this ride was actually really good. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Number 13 is going to be a little controversial, and that's because it's Terran at Phantasialand. Now, I say this because of what rides have been put a little bit higher, but in my opinion, Terran just is not as crazy or intense as I think a lot of people expect it to be. Like, I know many people that would rank this higher or at least around the level of Maverick at Cedar Point, but to me it's a night and day difference between those two rides. What I do love most about Terran is how theatrical it is. I love its launches, I love its transitions too, and I just wouldn't go as far as to rank it as a truly elite coaster. I do enjoy it quite a lot though. Another Intamin takes the number 12 spot, and that's Piraten at Djur Summerland in Denmark. Objectively, this is my favorite coaster in the country, and that's because it is a deceiving ride. It only stands 100 feet tall, yet it manages to pack in some immaculate ejector airtime. This thing is a speed demon, it sneaks up on you. I certainly wasn't expecting it to be as crazy as it was, but it repeatedly launched me out of my seat, and especially after it warmed up, I was pretty blown away. But I think I was even more blown away by Tornado at Bakken in Denmark. Now, I said Piraten was objectively the best ride in Denmark, and that's because it is. But sometimes the ride operators for Tornado will put this coaster on boost mode. What that is it's a setting that disables the trim brakes and allow the ride to spin more freely. It then goes from family thrill to one of the most intense coasters I've ever experienced. I absolutely could not believe what the ride ops put us through that day. Now, how I rank this ride is sort of a middle ground between boost mode and the normal setting. I rode Tornado 4 times in boost mode and I think twice in the normal setting, and at one point I had to tap out and convince them I was ready to get off because it is just so much to handle. Barely cracking the top 10 is Fluchtbahn Novgorod at Hansa Park in Germany. Oh my god, this ride is insane, and I really wasn't expecting it going in. I knew it had a crazy intense launch, but I didn't know of its theme and how dark it was, and I also didn't know about the indoor bit at the end. Even the outdoor section was far more engaging than I expected. Sure, the launch is incredible, but the camelback also gives fantastic airtime, the horseshoe element has some whip, and the roll is very fun. Not to mention a freaking beyond vertical drop in the darkness. Now, spots 9 to 1 are rides that I would personally classify as elite, and therefore they become much more difficult to rank. But coming in at number 9 is Hyperion at Energylandia in Poland. This is easily one of the best hypercoasters in the world. The layout is really quite varied because the first half is all out and back, and the second half is a whole twister section. What this does is it makes for a perfect balance of immaculate camelback, you got some really whippy dive loop, and also some low to the ground elements at the end. My favorite had to be the Stangle dives. I thought those were incredible. Number 8 is Fly at Phantasialand, my favorite coaster at this park. This ride is a spectacle. It is completely intertwined with the park's Rookburg section, which calls for some great interactions with the pathways, you got some fun near misses, and also you cannot tell where you're going next. That level of unpredictability is absolutely amazing. Not to mention you're lying in a prone position, and what Fly is able to accomplish for a flying coaster is unlike any other ride in the world. It's the only one that incorporates launches and airtime. And oh my gosh, there is so much airtime on this ride, I could not believe it. But I do still prefer one other Vekoma coaster in Europe, and that would be number 7, Lek coaster at Legendia. This has to be one of the most intense rides in the world. From the bottom of the drop all the way to the camelback, you are graying out so hard. And what's crazy is this gray out occurs during an ejector airtime moment. Rides that do this blow my mind because basically when you're getting airtime while your vision is completely fuzzy, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just an unexplainable element. But man, it takes a lot out of you, and all the airtime on this ride is ejector. There's not one moment of gentle floater. I'm fully convinced that a warmed up Lek coaster ride, its goal is to kill you. Even then, the layout flows so well and it's a very smooth ride. I think I got 12 rides on this thing before I couldn't take it anymore. It is just such an insane ride experience. Just missing out of the top 5 is Expedition G-Force at Holiday Park. I go back and forth all the time on whether or not this is my favorite coaster in Germany. As of right now, I don't think it is, but there's a reason it's such a strong contender. This thing might have some of my favorite ejector airtime moments in the world. They are so fun, yet so powerful. Intamin themselves said Expedition G-Force was their finest work, and honestly, it's not hard to see why. The layout is also one of the best in the world. I only wish it went a little bit faster in the middle section, but everything else about this coaster is perfection. My favorite German roller coaster currently is the Schwartesgannen at Hansa Park. This ride doesn't even feel real. It is this 240-foot tall tower encompassing the drop, and it has such a crazy story behind it. The theme of this ride is that there's this cruel king whose people wanted to rise against him. So he vows to build a fortress so powerful that he could hide himself in that that no one would be able to conquer. But for it to be truly unconquerable, a magic spell would have to be spoken, and with the king's desire to perfection, he says the spell and his soul is captured in the fortress and he dies. So not only is the theming absolutely insane, but the surprises this ride includes are absolutely ridiculous. I won't spoil them in case you haven't ridden this coaster, but they really add so much to the ride experience for me. Pair that in with an ultra intense layout comprised of wicked fast pacing and insane laterals, and you've got yourself a truly special and unique ride experience. Number 4 on our list is Conda at Walibi, Belgium. This ride is essentially a modern take on Expedition GeForce at Holiday Park. My one complaint for that ride is that its middle section maybe isn't the best. Conda fixes every issue I have with that, and it makes for a ride with absolutely no dead spots. The airtime is so varied. You have this incredible sustained ejector airtime in the first half and rapid fire pops in the second half. Along with many other modern Intamins, you can see that they've clearly drawn inspiration from Rocky Mountain construction with the Outer Banked Hill and wall stall. But they pull it off well, and it makes the layout so much more unique than many other hypercoasters. The execution here was spot on. This ride is absolutely amazing. Breaking the top 3 is Untamed at Walibi, Holland. One of 3 RMCs in Europe, Untamed is about as good as it gets. Sure, it may only be 120 feet tall, but it never lets up throughout the entire layout. The airtime on this coaster is obscenely strong, and there is so much of it. I find that this particular RMC combines the best of all the small ones, but also incorporates some aspects of the larger ones. Some great examples are these hills with shifts in the track, kind of like Zadra, and the constant ejector airtime within the ride structure like Steel Vengeance. I feel like I could ride Untamed all day long and never bored. That is if my thighs could handle it, but it really is worthy of the hype, and it's one of my favorite coasters on the continent. My second favorite European coaster is Zadra at Energylandia in Poland. Up until I rode my favorite coaster in Europe, Zadra was an actual contender for my favorite overall coaster. I'd consider this to be RMC's finest work because its pacing is absolutely insane and the elements of choice were also flawless. I feel like there was no element on this ride that was wasted. Like, you look at Iron Gwazi, and this is no shade against Iron Gwazi, it's an absolutely incredible ride, but towards the end of that layout, you do have some elements that feel like they're meandering just a little bit. See, Zadra does not have any of that, and I genuinely think the design they came up with here was perfect. No element lasts too long and no element is too short. Everything is as good as it could be. And while I have a never-ending list of amazing things to say about Zadra, there was one ride in Europe that excited me a little more, and that would be a Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland de Pan in Belgium. This isn't just my favorite coaster in Europe, it's also my favorite coaster I've ridden, period. This takes the extreme spinning coaster model by Mach Rides and uses it to every advantage possible. First of all, I can't imagine them designing a layout better than this one. Every element adds to the ride experience, and every element feels different every ride. That's because it's a free spinning vehicle. You might be going backwards, sideways, slantways, through all sorts of crazy elements. Ride to Happiness even has legitimate ejector airtime, including my favorite drop in the world, so you can take all of that going backwards and it's crazy. Another thing I love is the onboard audio. So many parks attempt onboard audio but can't pull it off properly. For this ride, it's a necessity because Ride to Happiness is a partnership with Tomorrowland, which is basically the largest music festival in the world that is held in Belgium. So you have this exciting EDM music that increases in tempo when the ride is traveling through its wildest elements. It is timed so well with the layout that it actually feels euphoric. Pair that in with the immaculate theming, incredible trains, and eye-popping color scheme, and you have a perfect 11 out of 10 coaster. I will be taking no excuses from here on out. If Plopsaland is able to do this, it's not even a big park, yet they managed to build something that actual big parks could only dream of doing. Mach Rides, Tomorrowland, and Plopsa did an outstanding job with this project, and I hope you all get the chance to ride this coaster at some point in your life. With that being said, that's how I rank the top 25 roller coasters that I rode in Europe. There were so many possible ways I could have ordered this list and so many rides that I wish could have gotten the spotlight. But 25 is actually a pretty tight margin to clear because I rode a ton of world-class attractions this past summer. The crazy thing is, there's still so many European countries I haven't been to with a lot of coasters that could have made this list. Sweden, Finland, Spain, Italy, the UK, all of these countries have rides that I would love to get on at some point. But for now, I'm proud of the list I came up with and I'm grateful to have experienced so many awesome coasters in Europe. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give me a like and subscribe as there will be a lot more European content coming in the near future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.